Hi. Yeah, I'm Denise. I'm the head of advertising sales from BigPoint, and today I'm going to talk to you about how you can monetize your non-pay users. Actually, for me to understand the audience better are there actually any game developers here? Okay, a few, okay. Advertiser, ad networks? Okay, so who's the rest? No game developer, no advertiser. What are you doing? Digital retail, okay. Analytics. But for a game developer? Yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect. Payments, okay. Well, yeah, then, so it's far-fetched. This is more for game developers, but I'm pretty sure it gives quite a range of advertising in games, so I hope that you all feel included in the presentation today. Yeah, don't worry. Okay, let's start. So, first of all, I will talk why we are even talking about advertising in games. Then I talk what is the perfect advertising for games in general. Then we look at the different types and how and which importance they have. Look into a few challenges that will arrive at some point, and then look into the trends that there are. So why do we even do advertising? Well, one of the main reasons is that, especially in free-to-play games, if you have a normal game, you have between, let's say, 2 and 5% of your users are paying users, right? Even if you have a great game, I think Candy Crush from King actually managed to have 11% of pay users, which I think is insane. So if you have such a great game, even then your monetization gap is like crazy. That means 90% of your users are always playing for free, but you're still having service costs, you still have the development costs, right? So what can we do there? And actually, advertising is your solution to that. So if you say this is your normal base revenue, and then you have some revenue on top of that because you're doing some events, like time-limited offers, whatever, then you can say advertising is a really great way to increase your base revenue. And of course, with an increased base revenue, there is a higher lifetime value of your overall user, which means you can spend more money into marketing, get even more users, so you see the cycle gets more interesting. And from my very personal experience, this is what you can achieve as an additional revenue per game, per category, if you do tasteful advertising. Why tasteful? Because you can do too much advertising and you can destroy your brand and you can destroy click rates. So if you do a very tasteful integration of advertising, you can do in core games which have really great ARPUs, you can achieve roughly 3 to 10% additional revenue. And in arcade games, like Bejeweled Blitz, for example, Diamond S, so they don't have as high of an ARPU usually. There you can have up to 50%. That's what I saw you can achieve with advertising. So that's for the why. The question is, I talked about tasteful advertising. So how does tasteful advertising look like? Or what means advertising for the games? So I actually developed 3 pillars. For me, advertising in games need to be non-intrusive, very well perceived by the users, and profitable. So, and this pillar, the focus on the game is actually the most important. Because when I talk to ad networks, it's always about how you can monetize them, what's the most important. But the most important, and this always needs to be, is the game. The game needs to be fun. Users need to stay in the game. They need to love the game. So whatever advertising you do, if it destroys your focus on the game, it's wrong. So advertising needs always to be simple, easy, nice to implement, and very automized. So the next thing is it needs to be at least neutral on the KPIs. That means if it has any kind of negative effect, you're destroying your game, you keep the game focus away. So it really needs to be, do A/B testing, and then you will see, okay, if advertising is at least neutral to your control group, it's awesome. If it's even better because you're adding a value, that's even great. And then profitable, of course, if I integrate advertising, then of course I want to make money with it. There are basically two KPIs we're looking at. First of all is the impressions, right? So the amount of impressions I can generate with my users, the amount of people that are watching my ads. And the second is how much money do I get for these impressions? Okay, so that's the advertising pillars that are actually telling me if an advertising makes sense, and I will come back to these pillars later. So let's jump in. There are a lot of different types of advertising, and I will try to wrap them up for you. And yeah, if you have any questions afterwards, then we can go deeper into any of them. So there are, for example, cash for action, there are different kind of videos, there are kind of product placements, there are display, and these are just the biggest ones. You can, of course, always have a YouTube stream which you can monetize. There are text ones that you can do. These are the four biggest ones. Hi. These are the four biggest ones that can make the most revenue for you, and that's why I will look into these. So, display advertising. Display advertising is really the most common and standardized one. This is, for example, the logout page of Pharmarama. There you can see there are two medium rectangles, basically, in there that can show everything from McDonald's to InnoGames' new game, whatever. What's great here, it's so standardized, you almost always in all countries have 100% fill rate. And it's really fast integrated. It's really, really simple. But of course, the CPMs are not as great. So you don't get as much money out of that. The next basic implementation is like, for example, our game Rising Cities. You have the skyscraper here. So this you could almost see as an in-game display placement. Skyscraper by itself get more CPM, so more money per 100 impressions than the medium rectangles. Whenever you do something like in-game, so like on the field, maybe on the bottom like a leaderboard, you gotta be really careful that it's not interfering with your gaming experience. Like, imagine I play something here, I build a new building, or I harvest my fields, and then here on the side you have like the flash saying, oh, you're the 1000th download, please, this is all great. That's really annoying. And 90% of the content that you get there is flash, and it's really difficult to, even if you have great blocking implemented, to make sure that the flash or the intrusive is not too intrusive. So you really need to decide for yourself how much is too much. For us, we actually decided not to do that. We only use this placement for product placement because there was no chance that we could make sure that it's not interrupting the user. And then, of course, some mobile placements as well, even though I'm more focused on web at the moment. But you have the banners. For example, in Flappy Birds, it made him 50,000 a day. It's not too bad. And then you have the interstitials, which are, for example, really great if you have a puzzle game. For example, in Diamond Dash, we tested it after you've played a round of Diamond Dash, you would get a quick interstitial, and we tested it with up to 4 interstitials per day per user, max 1 per hour, and it really had no negative effect on the KPI, so I can recommend that even as a long-time test for every other game developer with a puzzle game. So I think banner always feels a little cheap. You gotta be careful with that implementation, but interstitial is really great, and a lot of games have that already, so it kind of becomes a normal thing for the users. And then you have some kind of special moments. That's just an example from MediaBricks. This is really nice because it's very well integrated in the game. Let's say you have achieved something, you have achieved a new level, or you have unlocked something really great. Then you can have, for example, this is a cooking app, and then you have General Mills in there who is like providing cooking, supplements. Then it's really nice to have that brand very well connected with your game. But coming back to the pillars later, you will see that this also means that the integration cost is a little bit higher. So you have to decide later on, is it worth the additional integration? So now let's come to videos. Videos is my personal, yeah, I love it the most, let's just put it that way, because it has really high CPMs and you can do great things with it if you do it in a nice way, but not pre, mid, and post rolls. I put them here, we have them in our games, but I'm not the biggest fan, and I'll tell you why. So first let's go and say what that is. So pre-rolls, for example, we have that in front of our games. So when the game starts, you will see a video, then you're in the game. So this is not nice, not too nice, because it's forced on the user. So the user has to watch it. It's like your favorite TV show is interrupted by an ad. No one likes it, right? You can soften it up a little bit by saying, hey, your game is loading, and while you're waiting, it's nice that you have some stuff to do. So you can soften it a little bit, but this is not the nicest placement like for the user itself, right? But it gives good CPM, so this is quite profitable, and max 30 seconds is really nice. And actually for pre-rolls, I have to make a little advertising for Google because they have a very nice format called TrueView, which is skippable after 3 to 5 seconds. So that I actually like a lot because it's not as intrusive for the user. And now we come to my personal favorite, and this is incentivized videos. And incentivized videos are great because they are integrated at a place in the game where it's really nice. So it means users get something for playing the game, for watching a video. So this is an example of Hamarama. You can see we have our Halloween weeks at the moment, so that's why the screenshots are a little bit dark. So here, this is the city, so you will go there very often in the game because like it's a central place in the game. And there we have an animation for the cinema. Now, what happens? The user clicks on it. They get an information about, hey, watch a video, and you get some cinema points. That's this. And if you have enough cinema points, you can use it to get premium currency, which is awesome, or something other, so like something that makes your crop grow faster. So always something valuable for the game. So now they decide to actually watch the video, then you have some kind of video. As long as it's not bad for the brand, it doesn't matter what you show here, they will be really happy because they get something positive for it. But of course, the better the brand fits to the game, the nicer it will be for the agency, the branding agency, the nicer it will be for the game. And then, yeah, once they have finished the video, they get a reward layer saying, hey, you get your cinema points and everyone's happy. So this is a very nice way of integrating it because advertising is always perceived as something very positive. And they decide when they want to do it, right? So, yeah, exactly. So whenever they are bored, they can decide to, yes, now I want to see a video and I get something for it. That's great. And there are a lot of very nice ways to implement it. Like an example is Angry Birds Epic, I think. Actually quite nice to play. And here, when you watch a video, you get 10% more health and attack. So you always have to fight the evil pigs. And then, so this is really nice. So it always will give you some kind of advantage. So actually, the ways to implement that are basically limitless. And you have to decide for your game what feels right. And I can tell you, I have done it with over 8, 9 games now, very different from core, like Sea Fight and Dark Orbit, to like something like Diamond Dash and Pearl's Pearl, which is like hidden object game. You will always find a way to implement that where it feels really native to the game. So I haven't seen any game, free-to-play game where it hasn't fit yet. Good. Then there is cash for action, or you can also hear it as offer wall. So it's normally integrated with the payment providers or somewhere in this range. Yeah, it's quite easy. There's an offer. And when you do the offer, you get premium currency. So, which is quite nice. And you have something like surveys. You have also sometimes watching a video. Yeah, it's a nice integration. I think it always depends on you, how you integrate it and how many active users you have to really make this work nice. It always depends on the offers. If the offers are really nice, it will work very well. If the offers are crappy, your brand will be perceived as crappy. You gotta be careful with that. And of course, it's always on mobile as well. And then there is product placement. So product placement is really great because there's usually a very high value, so it's very profitable, and there's a great chance to implement it really well into the game. So this is, for example, The Sims, and here they have this Adidas special, so your Sims can now wear Adidas, so that's very well branded, they get some money for it. So this is a really great thing, because you would also wear Adidas in the real world, so it's nice to wear it in the game. Or like, let's say you have a car racing game, and then you would have some, like some tire brands on the side of the road. That would just work really well, because that's what you see in real life too. So product placement really needs to go hand in hand with the brand. And for example, Rising Cities is another one. Let's say you have a city builder, right? And then you have a hotel in there. Why not make it a Hyatt hotel, right? And then let it play some video when you click on it, and it's maybe an extra special building. But it doesn't need to be Hyatt, it can be Hilton, it can be Marriott. So you see, there are quite a few things that you can do here. So coming back to our 3 pillars from before, we said, hey, you need to focus on the game. It needs to be neutral on the KPIs, and it needs to be profitable. I kind of try to put it into perspective. Of course, it depends on the game, whether what I said here actually fits, but this is from my personal experience of putting it into a few very different games. So I think basic display is awesome because it's really easy to integrate. It doesn't drive away the focus of the games if you don't overdo it. So it's fast, and it's okay profitable, right? But you gotta be careful with the neutrality, that you don't do too much. So, but I will come to that later. Then the special moments, that is really nice because it's integrated really well. The CPMs are great, but it really drives away the focus from the game, because you need to think, okay, where in the game do I implement it? What kind of brands will fit there? So this can be a lot of effort on the games. So you really need to make sure that you have a small business case here to really say, okay, it's worth the effort. So actually with the special moments, with the incentivized videos and product placement, I would say the more active user you have, the more reasonable these things become. The less active users you have, the more I would go with very standardized, easy formats. So like basic display, basic video, cash for action is something. It doesn't matter how much users you have, that will work because the focus on the game is fine. This KPI works, right? But you won't get as much money out of it. So whenever we come to special display or incentivized videos, which I love a lot, or product placements, these make sense when you have a little bit more users. For example, incentivized videos, I say, if you have roughly 30,000 daily active users, and you have the best practices of implementing it correctly, so that you, out of these 30,000 users, you make a lot of impressions out of there, then this is something that can work. Below that amount of daily active users, I wouldn't go with it. And maybe to also give you some kind of ranges for how much money you can make, display advertising is roughly, most likely below €1 in most countries. There are countries like Germany, France, where you can maybe go over €1, and there are some months where it's better, but this is roughly what you can expect. Display, this really depends on how you integrate it. Basic video, you should be between €3 and €7, like worldwide, right? An average there. Incentivized videos, for example, in great countries like US or Germany, you can go up as high as 20, 25 euros. That's possible. The baseline here for good countries should never be below 5 euros, just as a rough estimate for you guys. Cash for action depends highly on the offers. And product placement, well, that's your negotiation skills right there, right? Okay, so just saying, BigPoint actually makes 85% of its ad sales revenue with this year, with incentivized videos. And another 10% maybe with cash for action and video, and then the rest is the rest. Okay, so there are some challenges that you will see with advertising. And one of that is the seasonal fluctuations. So this is actually our real ad sales revenue, roughly with stable impressions. And what you can see here is that there are some awesome months like December and June. So whenever you want to try something out, don't do it in January. And also don't do it in December, because it most likely won't give you the right expectations there. If you want to try something out, go more like with March or July. That are great months to actually see what like stable impact advertising can have for your game, right? And yeah, I don't have to say why that is that way, right? I mean, you can kind of catch the Christmas event here and the January where no one has any money left because of Christmas. Oh, and this is not only fill rates, it's one of the things is fill rates, so that there are not a lot of campaigns, but also CPMs. So you can really see then if you have a lot of campaigns, of course, campaigns are always also more expensive in these great months. So it's a combination of both, right? And these are fill rates. This is something global game developers or global brands itself have to really struggle with. So there are some countries where it's like so easy to get great fill rates and great CPMs, like US or Germany or even France, UK. It will be really, really easy to get great content there for great CPMs. But if you want to go in countries like Eastern Europe, where BigPoint actually has quite interesting traffic, it's really, really hard to find brands that are there. So to find good fill rates there. Actually, Mexico and Brazil are coming, so I expect something more in these ranges, and Latin America as well, but you can see there are quite a big red areas where it's like really hard also in the future probably to get some great content. And if you offer it as a feature, like for example the incentivized videos, you gotta make sure that you have good fill rates or good backup, because otherwise your users will be really, really sad that they can't use this feature. And then there are things like this. So the more, so you can't, well, let's go back to this before, I know I have too many guys here, that's confusing, I understand. So you have this, a lot of bad fill rates. So what you do at some point is you don't only have one ad provider, but you have a second one, a third one, a fourth one. I think we have now 8 and counting up. So it's a lot that we have implemented, always depending on which countries they are strong at. The thing is, the more ad providers you have, the more difficult it gets to ensure that your blacklist, like sexual content, is not being in there, right? I mean, we don't want sexual content, we don't want alcohol, for example, or any 18+ content. We don't want competitors in there. So actually, if like something from wargaming would be shown in our Drakensang or in our new game Shards of War, we would be really, really angry at the advertiser. So you gotta make sure that something like this doesn't happen. And then we have something, for example, like this. Well, I actually did a lot of arguing with our advertiser on this one, because for me and the community, this was quite the sexual content. Well, our advertiser thought that's really a hygienic product. So you can see, just because you think something is on your blacklist, it doesn't need to mean that that everyone else is the same impression. So you really got to make sure that you listen carefully to your community and make sure that you react to these things quickly. And we talked about this before. It's really, if you see how the advertising space has developed, what happens a lot is this. It's really overusing. I mean, I had an example of this but then in the end, I didn't really want to show it because I didn't want to talk about the page before, but there is a competitor site where there are over 8 ad placements in there, and other content you can buy as well. And this is just too much. You will weaken your brand, and in the long run, your revenue will go down. And you don't want to do that. The most important thing is your brand, that you build that for the long run, and also your game, that this is something great. Please don't destroy it just for a few extra euros. It's not worth it, right? And then there are trends. Like, one of my favorite trends is this one. So it's video. We know that almost 80% of the brand budget is still spent, like for video, is still spent on TV. And if we manage with the advertisers together, we have a lot here, if we manage to change the mindset and make sure that gaming traffic is a really great standardized ad type, then I'm pretty sure we will get a lot of these specific money that's now on TV, and we'll get it into games. Because in games, it's really, really positive. It's very positively perceived, and we can see this here, that in online videos, it's really the market that grows the most. Also because the other markets are quite saturated, you gotta say that too. And one of the next trends, of course, everyone is speaking about mobile. I'm not a big fan of this, just because Big will need a little longer to get on the mobile, and I'm trying to make the most out of the web traffic, so of course I'm not too happy with that, but it is definitely a trend, and for all the mobile developers out there, it's an awesome trend. And something which actually I haven't here is another trend which is really important, that's the programmatic trend. So that means there's a lot more profiling, targeting going on. So all of the data that we have, big data, the buzzword, right? It's really making sense of all the data and making sure that the right advertising gets to the right users. And there are a lot of developments going on there. Good. That's it. That was the going through advertising. I hope that I covered at least the most important aspects, and if you want to, we can go deeper into any of these.
Thank you very much, Denise. We had a full house. Okay, we have questions. We have time for questions, and please feel free to, go for it.
Thank you very much. Maybe it's apparent for everyone in the room, but the spike in December in sales, I can explain. Why June?
It's just that you have 2 very strong months. It's like it's in the middle of the year. It's really like they are ramping it up. And as I said, it's a lot coming from TV, and it's really that it has. I don't know exactly how to explain it. Actually, maybe like the Supersonic guys can explain that better, because they're in direct talks with the agencies. But it's really that they have their schedules and their budgeting, and they're not changing that. For them, it's really these months where they're just putting out all the money. It's insane. Yeah.
For Supersonic, it's mainly the summer. Before the summer, our advertisers are willing to spend with us about more. In December, like you said, Q4, whatever that leftover is from the year, they're spending it no matter what.
It's really about budgeting.
From a media perspective, June is important because there's E3, there's huge events like GDC, Game Connection, and a lot of big events coming up. So from a media perspective, we noticed a lot of increase in sales because all the companies are developing their games to be ready for that period.
Yeah, it's really big companies, big corporations that have their schedule for years. It's really a lot like that. You will see the same trend that I showed you here for online. You will see the same trend for TV. If you talk like to RTL, for example, they see exactly the same.
Thank you for this presentation. Actually, you mentioned 2 KPI to focus on, not to have advertising, not to pollute the game. Can you please repeat these 2 KPIs, because I didn't have time to write this down.
I'm not 100% sure what you mean.
Yes, you are talking of neutral on KPIs, and you mentioned 2 KPIs, but what are they?
No, actually, that's the profitability is CPM and impressions. Actually, the KPIs are game KPIs, right? Oh, I can't go all the way back; it's too much. For me personally, games itself have 3 pillars of KPIs. One is monetization, so how many pay users do I have, how much money do I get per pay user? So this is the monetization column. You don't want to destroy any base revenue there, right? You want to make sure that you have the exact amount of users still paying or even more, right? The second thing is virality. You want people to talk like crazy about your game, to invite your friends. So also on this aspect, it needs to be great, and the retention. So people want to come back to your game, want to spend a lot of time in your game. So these are the 3 pillars, and any KPIs basically you can imagine these pillars I have looked at and made sure that I probably looked over 20 KPIs to make sure that incentivized videos and display advertising is working well with our games.
Hey, Tal from Supersonic, of course we know. I was wondering regarding segmentation. So we're a big believer in segmentation, showing reward-based videos or offer walls to non-paying users. Are you finding that to be important, not important, big point from your past experience with Wooga?
So we definitely, especially display, we don't show it to any pay users, and also pre-rolls. So anything that is like really could have a negative impact on the KPIs, we make sure that we don't show it to pay users at all. But if you have something positive like incentivized videos or like offer walls, you want to show that to your pay users too. Maybe with a little less cap and maybe a little less frequent, but you want to show it too because it's something positive. You have implemented it in the game that it becomes a feature, and now not offering it to some of the users is really not great. So.
Any more questions? I have one question. Does this kind of solutions work across all games?
Yes.
Even if I'm working, I don't play World of Warcraft, so, but even if I play World of Warcraft, this kind of monetization is going to work for them.
Yeah. I think World of Warcraft could be really great for some kind of product placement done in the right placement. So we would probably need to sit together with a game designer with a product placement, but I can't see, for example, in the shop why you can't have there like a little display ad if it's done really nicely, integrated really nicely. I don't see why you can't have something on the logout pages. You can have definitely some really greatly branded items, like a sword that's sponsored, I don't know, by Gillette, like the razor, you know, it's like as great as your new sword. I could imagine something like this. But in the end, it needs to be really tasteful.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much, Denise.